Hi, welcome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jo, and I am absolutely thrilled to say I have recovery from a lifelong of OCD today. I feel so privileged to be here, and by here I mean here at like 10 past 10. At the last OCD conference, I couldn't make the opening talk because en route I got stuck in a prep trying to decide on the perfect, most symmetrical Bircher muesli that felt just right. And that decision painfully took me 1.5 hours. And then I had the task of performing my pre-meal ritual, which involved a small kitchen weighing scales that I'd brought along with me, and a lot of praying. And by the time I finished, it was lunchtime. I was exhausted. I turned up here and half the conference had already finished. Thank God my life isn't like that today. So I actually come from a background rife with OCD and phobias. As a child, I would wake up to newly decorated walls being smashed down by my dad because they weren't perfectly straight. And my mother couldn't embrace me because she was scared of contamination. And no one had a name for this, except for mad, or sad, or bad. And actually, it was a torturous mental illness called OCD. And as for me, by my early teens, I was an inpatient in Chase Farm Hospital with anorexia nervosa. And at the time, my OCD was seen as a symptom of anorexia, so it wasn't addressed. So after numerous eating disorder clinics, a couple of priests, an exorcist, I kid you not, hypnotherapy, I was still suffering with OCD, which just seemed to keep morphing from one form of OCD to another. So it was like switching seats on the Titanic. I'd go from compulsive tapping to body dysmorphia that was so severe I didn't leave my house for 2 years. And I actually lied to my friends. While I was writing this, I remembered this. I actually lied to my best friends that I was in the States when I actually was hiding at home. But that's how absolutely debilitating my OCD was. And for decades, my OCD went ignored. Worse still, it was exploited in several workplaces. And as a sad consequence, I suffered. I really suffered way longer than I needed to, and so did my nearest and dearest. OCD ended up robbing me of my career, of my relationship, and even of my home. I rendered myself street homeless and lost 3 months' rent because there was a minor infestation in my shoe drawer. And I saw it and I just had to leave. So I just walked out, and that was it. And I got 90% of my property, around 90%, I don't know, and I chucked it out because I just couldn't bear that it was in the same flat as an infestation. So why did I tolerate OCD's torture for so long? Because I believed the lie that OCD was simply a personality quirk, a choice, a quality. I didn't seek help, and I even blamed myself for my OCD. Whereas the reality is that OCD was my master. It was my prison keeper. It is a biochemical, psychological-based illness that I had absolutely no control over by myself. So as the years went by, thank God, I kind of became sick and tired of being sick and tired until I finally went to a 12-step support group for OCD and was absolutely fascinated to hear so many stories like my own. And there I learned that this self-punishing behaviour wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was OCD. And I learned that OCD was a serious condition that could affect anyone from any background, any age. I learned that OCD wasn't my fault. I didn't choose it. I didn't wake up one morning and be like, oh, please give me OCD. And there was treatment. And it's there that I heard about OCD Action. In fact, I heard about the OCD Action Conference, and I came here. Of course, within 5 minutes, I tried to convince myself that I shouldn't even bother pursuing treatment. It would be too hard, it'd be too scary, it wouldn't work for me because I had an eating disorder, I'd be pumped full of drugs, I'd be locked up. I mean, I really came out with everything. And I'd love to say that I boldly convinced myself that it wouldn't happen, and filled with hope, I rung up OCD Action hotline, but that's not my story. I just felt desperate and so utterly lonely and broken and kind of belligerently curious. So I called up OCD Action's helpline, and a volunteer answered. He was called David. And he had been exactly like I was, and he had recovered, and he totally understood my pain and frustration. And that, to me, totally blew my mind. I had seen a lot of professionals in my life, but to actually have someone on the phone say, I totally get it, I was like you, and that isn't the case for me today, it filled me with so much hope. And right there, my recovery started. I got my first hour, 15 minutes at a time, of abstaining from one of my OCD rituals. And he went on to explain the steps I should take to get treatment in the UK. It was scary as hell. But with each step I took, I was supported. I've had an incredible team at the Priory. I found an incredibly helpful organisation that I actually found here. It's called Top UK, Triumph Over Phobia. Is Trilby in the room? Thank you. Your organisation is amazing. Thank you. So, in a nutshell, my treatment process has comprised of CBT therapy, exposure therapy, medication with fluoxetine, so an SSRI, and support from my OCD 12-step group, which for me has been absolutely life-changing. I can't say recovery has been easy, but it wasn't a fraction as scary or as painful as I imagined. An example of one of my exposure therapies where in fact, the last time I was here, I had several religious bracelets that I could not take off. I absolutely believed something bad would happen to me and everyone else in the room. And so part of my exposure therapy was to leave the house for an hour at a time without this bracelet. And I remember going, this is like watching a horror movie. I know it's not real. I know I can switch the movie off, but it's still really scary. And I'm just so glad that there was other people out here and volunteers that got that. And in less than 2 years of treatment, I've gone from living like a hamster on a hamster wheel to a more balanced, loving, fulfilling way of life. Today, I'm 35. I no longer am a slave to OCD. I no longer hate living. I no longer allow OCD to dictate my choices and my relationships and my city that I live in and God knows what. And I don't feel I have to work twice as hard to be half as good as anyone else. This morning I picked my breakfast in, I love to say seconds, but it was about a minute. I've got a long way to go. But I didn't need a religious bracelet, and I didn't need a ritual, and I didn't need a weighing scale, and I didn't need anything except for my faith to show up here today. I actually have a wet butt because I sat on some coffee outside. There would have been absolutely no way I would have stood up here not feeling perfect before. And that's my life today, and I never want to go back to my existence pre-recovery, and I never need to go back. So to all those people out there being bullied by OCD, don't feed the disease by undermining it, by undermining its impact, and don't give it any more airtime than you need to give it. Things can be different. OCD is a serious mental illness and absolutely treatable. I am living evidence of that fact. So thank you so much to OCD Action for this conference and the opportunity to share my incredible experience. And thank you all for listening to me. Thanks, it's a pleasure.